What else are you excited about from the offensive side of the ball? I think we talked about the O-line. We talked about the quarterback room. But I think that there's a few other positions that have some experience, and then we have some few other positions that also have question marks.
Yes. And let's go straight to the question marks. I think, well, with that, like you said, tight ends, some of the best in the country.
No doubt. Shout out Ty Howe.
Yeah, T. Howe, yes, sir.
My God.
I went up there the past last season, and I was just super happy to see him in the room, man. It's a complete separate tangent, but love Ty Howe, man. That's a core guy. It's an underrated piece in college football.
No doubt.
Having one of those guys and still in the locker room as a coach now, not every kid's going to be able to really understand that. But as we're sitting here speaking on Penn State football, that's a core piece of, like, the history of Penn State football. Ty Howe, shout out to him, man, running the Aces. And he's got some guys in there, man, some guys I really like. I had a chance to speak to some in his offseason, just casually. Yeah. And I think that'll be a big role or a big key part of this offense. Tight ends, quarterback's best friend.
Yeah.
Work the middle. These guys got a blend of everything, speed, size. They're going to block. We know that. They're going to block. And starting with those guys, I think that'll be maybe in my head the first read or whatever you want to say. Yeah. Being that we have some receivers. The receiver group, I think, is full of talent. I'm super excited to see who kind of, like, steps up and becomes that guy.
Someone has to.
And I think that's the question mark, really. Who's going to be that guy that Drew, as we've seen the Godwins of the last few years, the A-Rob, whoever it may be, the Deshaun Hamilton, that guy that kind of racks in the receptions, the reliable, let's find him.
Yeah. I think you brought up a good point, too, about the tight end room and taking it big picture, the ability to run the football, and you highlighted, these guys aren't single-dimensional type guys. They aren't just big guys that can run and catch and don't want to block,
right?
Or guys that can't move worth a lick but will stick their head in there, and that defensive coordinators can kind of put keys on, right? Yeah. These guys are the Swiss Army knives that the position's supposed to be, and they create a ton of mismatches. And with the ability to run the football and their willingness to block, to your point, I think you have a very unique opportunity to create some very advantageous mismatches with a kid who can run and separate against a linebacker who is reading run key first, or a safety who's filling in quarters in run key first, and then being able to get those guys out. So to your point, I think that almost synergistically, if that's even a word.
If it isn't, I like it. I like it.
Sounded good, right? Helps with those question marks at the wide receiver position.
That's true.
You know what I mean? And, Marcus Hagan's coming up there from Virginia. He's a get guy who recruited me at UVA. He's a 7'5" boy, biscuit. So Coach Franklin's poaching all the guys. He's got Dex up there. He's got Marcus up there now. I think he's going to do a great job of developing those guys. And the one thing I want to talk about, too, and I want to get your opinion on, is the transfer portal, right? I think the transfer portal, and especially at the receiver position, I'm not saying it's a dime a dozen, but you can find guys at that position pretty much at a pretty impressive clip. They're out there, right? It's not like finding a Drew Allar quarterback. You can go out and find a guy who can separate and get you some catches and get some confidence specifically in a system. So, the one guy that I'm going to keep an eye out on, because it's kind of outside of the frameworks of what Penn State's done from a recruiting standpoint, I think, when you look at just body types, right, is the kid from Florida State, Malik McLean.
Yeah, transfer.
He's 6'4", he's a big body, he's a transfer. And then you got Dante Cephas, obviously, who's probably another one who transferred in from Toledo, who's got a ton of ball under his belt. I'm curious to see how they come in and apply that to the new system, new phase. And they had a pretty good success story last year with a transfer. So when you look at McLean, though, he's not that 6 foot shorter guy. The transition can kind of play all the, like I said, he's kind of like that old
big
school
body.
Traditional X, big body, and could be a guy if he continues to grow and continues to show separation abilities, big catch radius, that can almost be a safety blanket for a young quarterback early on, kind of like Allen was for me.
Yeah, that'd be beautiful.
So I think that's really interesting, and the offensive side of the ball is I think, like I said, it's been in the best hands and the best position that Penn State football has been in quite some time.
Yeah.
I mean, even the 16 team that you guys played on, there was a lot of question marks coming into that, and you guys had Saquon, you had Trace, you had Chris coming back. Like, you had some guys, but there was still, I think, some question marks. Here, your question marks are, you're saying it, but it's like, this kid's got a ton of talent, and this kid's got a ton of talent. Can they just come in and can we make it all work? Yeah,
I think opposite of the 2016 team, like you said, this squad this offensive identity has shown they can impose their will. That's what you said.
Yeah.
And like you said, I'm not sure if we had that.
Yeah.
We had explosive players and explosive plays and creative plays, but I'm not sure if we just lined up and boom, zone, and just
I've said that too.
Grind it for 6 yards.
Like, as impressive of a career as Saquon's had, and I got to play with him when he was a true freshman. As impressive of a career as he had, when you go back and actually watch his tape, like, he had a lot of negative 1 yard, 2 yard gains, but you hand him the ball 25 times, he's gonna break 5 of them.
Something's gonna pop.
You know what I mean?
Something's gonna pop.
And like I said, it wasn't necessarily like dude was running through. I was like, imagine if Saquon was at Wisconsin, what kind of college career he would have had. You know what I mean? And thankfully, I think Penn State's finally getting to that point where they're getting back to that old school, hard nosed, physical up front mentality. And I think that you're only going to benefit, especially with the stable they have now. So. And
kind of coming back to the receivers, I know I say, someone has to kind of develop to become that guy, but maybe they don't. Like you said, if it's an all-around kind of balanced offense, tight end, because, there's only one ball.
Right.
The running back's got to touch it. They're going to touch it.
Yeah.
Tight ends are going to have their plays, their touches, and also I'm not really going to expect, and it'll be a beautiful sight, it'll be fun football to watch, but I'm not going to expect Drew to drop back and sling it 40, 50 times a game. In a wide open spread offense where there's 4 receivers on the field at once. So it doesn't have to, no one has to become that guy, but everyone has to do their part and be ready when the ball comes their way.
Listen, man, and I think people get caught up in that. Like, at the end of the day, football is a simple game, man. It's numbers, leverage, and matchups. And at the end of the day, however you create those matchups and however you do those things, like I said, it might not be sexy. It might not be, that 35-point-a-game type of offense that you want to see. But if it's effective and you win games, it can be death by 1,000 cuts.
Right.
And I think you're putting the kid in the best situation to be successful. And offensively, you're spreading the touches. And I think that puts us in a perfect tee-up position to talk about the defense.